You to Trend's third annual Political Islam e-forum delivered by Trend's Researches and Advisory Center over the coming 2 days, the 31st of October and the 1st of November. Ladies and gentlemen, although the political Islam forum has been under a lot of debate, however, it's not quite understandable so far because of the various definitions based on the trends that affiliate or appreciate it, and the other voices which rejects it among the academia and Arabic academia. In an attempt to find a scientific solution, a dialogue on this phenomena, we organized the E-Symposium where prominent professors and researchers participate in order to raise awareness about this phenomenon. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is for Dr. Muhammad Ali, the CEO of Trends Research and Advisory Center. Dr. Muhammad, the floor is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, professors and experts participating with us in this e-forum, our dear guests and followers over various platforms, I would like to welcome you with the greetings of Islam. Peace be upon you. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, and I would like to thank you for your kind attendance and acceptance of our invitation to participate in our third annual Political Islam e-forum, which is under the title of Towards Global and just a Global Dialogue of Political Islam. This E-Symposium is organized by Trends Researches and Advisory, and its role to follow up with the political Islam phenomena and in its commitment to spread the values of coexistence, peace, and cohesion in the society and all over the world, whether in the Arab world or outside. This e-forum, which is organized annually by Trends, has become a platform for all specialists on political Islam for discussions and coordination of visions about all issues related to this phenomena. What makes us happy and satisfied about this that this this year's forum has been under a lot of debates and discussions and a lot of acceptance and participation from different parts of the world. Trends for Researches and Advisory has organized its first annual Political Islam under the title The Road to Khilafah, the facts about the Muslim Brotherhood projects, and all the researches and dialogues and presentations has been gathered in one book and issued by Trends. The second one was about the Muslim Brotherhood expansion project, which has been organized during 2021 and it's under published right now. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, in spite of the significant importance of political Islam, however, we believe that it has not been fully understandable by various parts, especially the global scientific centers, because of the Islamic political Islam has been under a lot of discussions and debates, and there has been a lot of trends and groups about among the academia in all over the world. So it has become necessary to carry out and hold a scientific dialogue on political Islam in order to reach out outcomes and results that could be agreed upon to deconstruct and understand this phenomena and to understand all the researches and literature has been issued about it since the 40s and 50s of the previous centuries. On that ground, Trends during this e-forum has gathered a lot of a group of specialists about this phenomena in order to hold realistic and reasonable discussions about this phenomenon in order to raise the awareness among academia about this phenomena. Today, this year's forum has two e-symposium. The first one, Arab academia and its vision of Islamism, and the second one, the non-Arab academia and its vision of Islamism, where a group of prominent professors and researchers will participate to run discussions about the vision of academia from all over the world about Islamism. Ladies and gentlemen, in trends, researchers and advisory centers are confident that this group of researchers and academia professors will be able to establish a roadmap to reach the outcomes expected from this e-forum. At the end of my speech, I would like to thank you for your kind participation and attendance, and we are looking forward for more coordinated researching projects, and peace be upon you. Thank you. We would like to thank Dr. Muhammad Al-Ali for his valuable opening speech, which focuses on the importance of the E-Forum. Now, I give the floor to Dr. Khalifa Dhahri, the Executive Director of Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace, to run and to host the first session. In the name of Allah, and peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad and his disciples, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you. It is my pleasure at the beginning of my speech, which is and also the beginning of the third annual for political Islam forum. This important e-forum, which is about a very important ideological and phenomenon that gathers a lot of specialized professors and researchers to find an answers and deconstruction the concepts of political Islam. I would like to thank Trendis and all who participated in the organizations and in the organization of this event. And I would like to thank Dr. Muhammad Ali for giving me the chance to run the first session and for his valuable sponsorship of this event. The first session is about Arab academia and its vision of Islamism, where through the discussions and presentations of experts and specialists, we will run scientific discussions where we can come up with outcomes and results that could raise our awareness about political Islam and its dangerousness on Arab and Western societies. This third e-forum organized by Trends is an actual realization and translations of the strategies of the centers and its mission to uncover this phenomenon. Trends through its activities and events has become one of the most important think tanks that are keen in analyzing the trends of political Islam regionally and internationally, and it has become a reference in this regard. Before the start of our sessions, I would like to thank all the experts and specialized professors for our gratitude for their participations. At the beginning is Dr. Muhammad Abdullah Al-Ali, who gave his speech. He's the CEO and the founder of Trains Research and Advisory. I would like also to thank Professor Muhammad El-Haddad, Professor of Islamic Civilizations in the University of Carthage, Tunisia. Also, I would like to thank Ms. Aisha Al-Rumaithi, Deputy Chief of the Research and Advisory Sector, as well as Professor Anas At-Tariqi, Professor of Modern Civilization, University in Tunisia, and also Mr. Muntasir Hamada, specialized researchers in Islamic movements. Now we will have, and after we listen to the speeches, we will have time for questions and answers. Now we will start with the speech of Professor Muhammad Al-Haddad. The time of the speech is 10 minutes. Professor Al-Haddad is a professor of Islamic civilizations in the University of Carthage in Tunisia. Dr. Muhammad, the floor is yours. There is a technical problem that we cannot hear the voice of Professor Al-Haddad. Now we'll give the floor to Miss Aisha Rumaithi because it has common features of extremism, such as a division of society based on ideological concepts and takfir or disbelieve the others based that there is no care or they don't care for patriotism. Based on that, we are in trends are really astonished how some categories from the academia, especially the Western academia, claim that the Muslim Brotherhood is different from others Islamist groups and they are moderate. And we are also astonished how that the request for a mechanism to participate in actual democracy process and they can reach also the positions of ruling in Qatar. Based on that, we have decided to launch the third annual uh, Political Islam e-Forum, which focuses on discussion of political Islam. And in this regard, we listen and discuss and we listen to the results and outcomes of academic researches to have more or deep understanding of the political Islam and its dangerousness on societies, whether Muslims or Arab or Western societies. Thank you for your kind listening. We would like to thank Ms. Aisha Romesi for her compliance with the time and for her scientific paper which highlights the risks and dangerousness of Islamic political Islams and focuses on the doctrine of violence of such groups who adopts the concept of political Islam. Now we move to give the floor to Professor Anis At-Tariqi, Professor of Modern Civilization in the University of Tunisia in Tunisia. He will give us a speech about the Arab academia and its vision of Islamisms. Dr. Anas, the floor of views. I would like to welcome you all. Do you hear me? Yes. Now, my speech about the Arab academia of the political Islam, I would like to make it comprehensive in order to I based my paper on the definition of political Islam. And on that ground, I will try to predict the future of political Islam based on the new terminology that has been invented in this regard. Specifically, I mean the terminology delivered by Mr. Saleh and Batros brothers about the post-Islamisms or the returning of Islamisms or retrospective or the new Islamisms. From my point of view, I define political Islam as, in fact, a theory in the state which represents complete resistance for the modern state. And I believe that Abu al Maududi is the first who delivered such comprehensive concepts in his famous book, the forum or the documentation of the concept Islamics, and where he discussed the concept of Hakimiyya in Islam. From this perspectives, Al-Maududi has, from my point of view, he he has uh, created the concept of bias in the authority in Islam. However, this the theory of Islam makes it a mere copy of the modern state. In the heart of this discussion of Abu al-Maududi about the modern Western state, he makes the concept of Islamic rulings that solves all the problems related to the modern states. These are really very difficult and deep issues and problems which is most of important, is discrepancies between the modern state, which give promises that the modern state gives to the citizens, and the non-fulfillment of such promises, and that the modern states fall on the trap of the proceduralism or the essenceless law, which has nothing to do with the fact. In fact, in this resistance deforms the concept and the theory of Islamic theory of authority and ruling. Actually, it deforms the concept of ruling itself in Islam. And on that ground, such resistance distracts us from what we should do in the framework of what we should consider the renewal of the religious theory and the political Islamic theory. As for the future of this phenomena, which I believe that it has makes a comprehensive movement for this Islamic theory of ruling and the modern state theory. I believe that the concepts and the ideas delivered by Wael Saleh and Patrick are very useful in this prediction. These concepts are the concept of new Islamism or retro Islamism, netro-Islamism, which means that we will face an Islamism which a list of names of the leaders who died without any impact on the ground. I think these terminologies are very useful because it highlights the awareness that this phenomenon now is within the postmodernism context, which has to do with the deconstruction of the collection center of religious collection and political collection. The state is the main central of authority, but in this context, the state loses the authority in a lot of channels, which has been created by relevant parties and also religion. The state also loses some control over religion, and the scholars loses control over religions and become some mediators, authorities that is are there in even in mosques in some states in Europe, such as many branches or collection branches for Muslims, and provide Islamic cultures that are various from each other. What is important about these concepts delivered by Wael Salah and Battery Spirit, it is that we have to look into these concepts within general contexts and landscape, which is the continuous awareness that this phenomena is very resilient and flexible, which makes the political Islam able to continue starting from 1925 until now. Who could expect that this phenomena, the political Islam, that we believe that has been clinically died during Abdel Nasser and Hosni Mubarak, will return back to rule Tunisia or Egypt in 2012 and 2014? And the reason for the continuity and ongoing business of this phenomena is it's a high level of resilience and flexibility. It controls the core and the root causes and the core concept of religious concepts and the at-tawhid al-Islami, the Islamic tawhid, and the other concept of al-Hakimiyya. Since we are in this religious landscape, we live actually on the Ash'ari understanding of Al Tawheed doctrine. However, the political collection delivered by Al Maududi will stain the theme, a very attentive explanation for a lot of strata in the society. And it has a certain understanding of good. So Al Maududi says, since Allah created the universe, so its ruling and its sovereignty will be prevailed all the whole politically and religiously. This is acceptable by a big community and the field. However, it has some misunderstanding, and we should be aware of this concept. Makes this political Islam able to continue, or it might be historically dormant, a new historically dominant era, but it will come back again. We should renew our concept continuously, so to be able to understand this phenomena, in order to be able to avoid it, to have a new reform, a new renewal of religious religion during this period of our modern history. Thank you. Thank you for your valuable speech, which confirms that Islam, political Islam, and its resistance for modern state, and it focuses on the concept of Hakimiyya in the books of Abu al-A'la al-Mawduda, and the concept of authority, which has been deformed by Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, and then Sayyid Qutb, who have defamed and deformed the concepts of authority in Islam. On that ground, we can see nowadays these groups, the political Islamic groups, has a false understanding and false slogans that really contradicts with the intents of the modern states. They have bad and wrong intentions. The speech is now for Mr. Muntasar Hamada. He's a researcher in Islamic movement in the Kingdom of Morocco. He will be talking about Islamic movements, which is very important, and where Trends has allocated a separate sessions in this e-forum. The floor is yours, Mr. Muntasir Hamad. Asad, do you hear me? Yeah. No. I would like to welcome you, and I would like to thank your valuable organization of this events, and I would like to thank you for your efforts, and I thank for you, Dr. Muhammad Al Ali, for inviting me. I would like you to excuse me that there's an issue with the timing. I would like to apologize for this. I will talk about a brief about the study that as Dr. Marwa said, my contribution will be the evaluation and assessment of the Islamic movements about what has been published in the Arab academia, I mean, the Arab researchers in this region about Islamism in general, whether political, and they'll talk about the Islamic movements, and they'll focus about these two trends, the Islamism and the political Islamism, focusing on the Muslim Brotherhood project and the jihadist Islamism like Al Qaeda, ISIS, and other jihadist groups. This study is based on two main factors. The first one is, which is very important, is that discussion of such topics needs complex thinking and complex approaches. So the more we have approaches, the more we will be able to have complex explanation, so that we can have a deep understanding of such complicated phenomena, which is the political Islam and Islamisms. This is the first factor. The second dimensional factor is based on various readings in researches and papers, and also the researches issued by think tanks. I will be talking about it in the second topic. The second factor is that although, and despite of this time period, the three previous decades since the Second Gulf War, since 19 and since the invasion of Iraq until now, although the area and the region has witnessed a lot of events related one or another to Islamism. However, there has been a quantitative accumulation of the researches on Islamisms. However, the issue is that we have a quantitative accumulation and less quantitative accumulation and seen. So a lot of researches, a lot of papers has been written, whether Egypt, Tunisia, and Europe, and there is a quantitative references and researches has been done and been in this regard. However, in we lack really the qualitative is less. I mean, the quality of the research is less. So in this regard, with the think tanks, with exception of some essential, especially during the last decade, there is some such as the think tanks here in the think tank here in trends, researches, and advisory. So we need to focus on the quality more than the quantity. The study has four topics. The first topic is the context, the context of reaction of the Arab community with the Islamism, and that some of these communities how they react and how they absorb this concept. So we have a period context that we our time concept that we can focus about it, and so and I expect that I won't be talking too much about it. The first context is the events in June 26 in Beirut, where we have witnessed suddenly uh, very active reactions of researchers about the events in this year, especially Islamism, about the model of Hezbollah, and they have been appreciating this phenomena. And there's a lot of references, national references, and I will say Masr, Egypt, and the Arab Gulf. So there was nationalism and Sufism, and also these contradiction. They just appreciate or the Shiite model of Islamism. And the second topic is the global Islamism or the Western one. For example, in New York, there has been a quantitative, a quality approaches in this regard, and they focus on jihadist Islamisms. So here they focus such as Al Qaeda and ISIS, and they just marginalize the other political Islamist movements such as Muslim Brotherhood, and also in the American model, and here in the region as well. There has been a lot of papers and series about the motives of the Islamisms and the beginning of such. And the third context with the events of January 2011 and what we saw the creative chaos, and there is a lot of explanations of what happened, or the Arab Spring, or as you might call it, there is a failure states and something like this. This context is distinguished by the return of researchers focusing on jihadist Islamisms, especially Muslim Brotherhood Islamisms, that the Muslim Brotherhood and some of the Islamic groups and movements has won elections in some countries. So they focus on time context where some names in the thinking and researches in this study I talk about and so there's another factor, the reference mode. I mean, the references. It's very important to pay attention for the references of the research names and the researchers. The lack of proper and quality references really affects the results and outcomes of such researches and papers. I will give also three examples. The first example, the Islamization of knowledge. I mean, the think tanks and with the second wave of Islamisms like Asma al Faruqi, Abdul Wahab al Masiri, and Abul Qasim. It's the second movement after the events of the creative chaos. It has been evidentially clear in the Arab Gulf states and it's been led by currently Muslim Brotherhood or previously. We expect that the researches and the quality and the outcome of such researches, whether research papers, magazines, or books, will deal with this issue. Here, I stop at set some examples which are very important. The reasons for this because it's prevalent. It's nobody talks about it. The second model is the leftist Muslim Brotherhood in France, in Francois Bourgois. I mentioned here some names, the names of researchers and researchers who has some references with the Muslim Brotherhood, nationalism, or as and for in communism or something like this. So it's very important that they have united together against for some reasons. This is for the reference unit. The third determinant is the approaches. The approaches are also important. Why? Because it has to do with the first determinant which I referred to. Well, I mean the quantity versus the quality. That we have big quantity but less quality. The importance of this approach is that it helps us evaluate such papers, researches, and works. It is evidently clear that most of the researchers about this field and researchers about this focuses on political sciences and sociology, but the names that focuses on psychology is very limited. We have Anas al-Turiqi mentioned it. We have also some exceptions in Tunisia to deal with Islamisms from psychological point of view. Tunisia is very distinguished in this regard. I don't have answers for the questions why Tunisia is distinguished in dealing with Islamism on from a psychological point of view, but they are very prominent in this regard and very special case in the region. There are some other names in Egypt and Morocco, and they have some, but generally the distinguishment is Tunisia. They are very distinguished in this regard. My point here is that there are several approaches, but what is dominant and researches about Islamism is the political sciences, sociology, and the other branches of knowledge and science are very limited, which does not benefit the complex rethinking or reapproaching, because for example, the Sufism is also important when focusing on Islamism. However, we do not, when we have some researchers in Islamism are very limited with Sufism references. The fourth topic was the recommendation. My assessment, there are some critical notes and the recommendation to hold a lot of workshops and conferences such as the forum or noted that to assess and evaluate the researchers and these new concepts. Thank you. We would like to thank Mr. Muntasar Hamada for his valuable speech where he talked about several contexts and the reaction between the Arab academia and Islamisms. He talked about the fact that he mentioned the efforts exerted by the huge effort exerted by to focus on the political Islam researches and the efforts exerted by Trends Center and universities and think tanks. And he also talked about Arab academia and its how it is impacted by Islamism. He also talked about an important point. He talked about the Arab academia vision of Islamism, which is the Islamization of knowledge. This is a very important approach where Islamism managed to get through to academia. And we have some very prominent, Dr. Muhammad Al Haddad. Is he available? Now, since Dr. Al Haddad is not available, we will give the floor to questions and answers about this topic. If you have any questions, comments, or anything to add, he is most or she most welcomed. Do we have any comments, any questions? So we don't have any questions in the sense now. Mm, mm. Now we have a question to Mr. Anas Al Tariqi, the professor of modern civilization in the University of Tunisia. Nowadays, we witness uh, an elite of educated researchers that enhances the concept of modern state. Do you think that nowadays in the Arab universities, especially the specialization which has to do with humanities and Islamic studies, do you think that the modern state is strongly available or it needs revision? Thank you, Dr. Khalifa. Do you hear me? No, yeah. Mhm. If you could re-answer, just say the question again, please. Nowadays, you find an elite of highly educated and cultured philosophers and thinkers believe in the values of modern state. However, we find that some universities, which depends heavily and in fact on old curricula, up till now we haven't seen the concept of new modern state is available in Islamic studies. Do you think that this concept is already available strongly or in the universities that deliver courses of Islamic studies or humanities? Thank you. The concept of modern state in the Arab world generally is a new concept that has not been clearly understandable by a lot of researchers and thinkers. Either there is a lack of understanding of this concept, or there is, surface, proper, non, improper understanding of this concept, or lack of inclusion of this concept in academic researches. The concept of modern state in fact is not clearly defined to the extent that we cannot, or sometimes we find a bias for modernism. And this concept, in fact, we deal with it just from the form. So the modern state means that, so that the proper mechanism of appointing of the presidents is through election, which is the main value is the sovereignty of the citizens or the people. However, we just focus on the form and the surface of the modern state. As for the level of academia, we do not we do not find this concept fully or clearly understood, except in some countries or some universities, as and some Arab universities, especially from the curriculum that should be adopted in order to implement the values of the modern state or the modern science. the meaning of modern science has changed from the old meaning. The second change in the modern science is that the human phenomena have become has not been taught are not taught in the curriculums where the applied sciences. So there's a big difference between humanities and the applied sciences, which is the humanities and human phenomena has to do with human being, and the other phenomena is in the applied sciences. That is the reason we still we still have the an issue with the implementation of these concepts, and we couldn't so far move to study these concepts from a complex approach, as our dear colleague Muntasir said. We should focus in this complex approach, which is take into consideration human phenomena as phenomena with different levels, such as the political Islam phenomena should be studied from different levels: socially, politically, religiously, psychologically, historically as well. And this will enable us, if we are aware of the concept of the complex thinking or the organized thinking, will give us more and more a wider approach to this concept. The second thing is that the lack of proper researches and studies of Islamic political Islam and the implementation of the principles of modern science, which has to do with humanities and human phenomena. What is really lacked is so the disciplinarity concept. I mean, we, in addition that to the concept that we implement the principles of complex thinking, where we have different disciplinarity, like socially, psychologically, and religiously. We should focus on the disciplinary, so that we should really study, for example, the phenomenon from the discourse point of view. We need the philosophy of language. We should be aware that language is an action that has impact on the ground, and Islamicists now use language as the action itself that impacts others. Instead of carrying guns, it's enough to, for example, create a false information, or just give a false information on the platforms or social platforms, so that it becomes actual fact, even if that everything on the ground indicates that such false information is really rumor, and it has it has nothing to do with reality. However, we find the big sector of the society here. Okay, so the repetition of saying the same sentences makes people accustomed to sentences that they don't know before, and meanings that they are not accustomed to before. And Islamisms and political Islams uses this mechanism, and we have seen it in Tunisia. We have seen it strongly in Tunis. They just make use of the discourse. It's a famous quote by the critical philosopher Gingrich Stein, when he talks about the game of language and manipulation of language, is that which means using languages instead of weapons and physical actions to spread ideas, that focusing on polarization and bringing supporters and enabling political Islam to reach ruling, and it was successful in Tunisia. Not to mention the discourse analysis approach. We can say we should have should apply the historical analysis of ideas. This is very important. We can easily say that it's clinically dead, but we should be aware that, and we should look into from the history of ideas, that the main idea that enabled this political Islam to spread from its beginning is the same idea now, almost the same idea now, which is the interpretation of the concept of Islamic Tawheed, politically motivated interpretation. We're using the sovereignty of, which is a translation of sovereignty, and it is a main concept in modern state. And this concept is a political concept, secular concept, which has nothing to do with religion. And when you connect it to religion through the pretext of the Islamic Tawheed doctrine, through which you understand that Allah creates the universe, this is what our Tawheed doctrine says, and we should translate the sovereignty of Allah over the universe politically through the concept of Sharia. This is the manipulation of concepts. It's a historically proved approach, and the main idea issued by Islamic political Islam. So, if you, for example, the concept of Hassan al-Banna about Hakimiyya, it wasn't clearly written in his books, but it is available in his writings before al-Mawdudi comes and provide this concept to the political Islam. And we see this new concept re-emerge again after Said Qutb in his book Ma'alim fi Tariq, Milestones on the Road. We also can approach this phenomenon through and analyze it through the interpretative approach, because this phenomenon focuses on that the human being is focusing on interpretations so that he or she can reach out some concept and some outcomes. So what they do, they just throw away some concepts, some sentences, and practice some actions that makes, for example, sadaqat alumnis. So for example, to the charity gathering, images, a lot of pictures, which the groups, when they do some charity works and volunteer works, these pictures and images that are published on a wide scale makes this makes its way through their awareness, and whoever sees this will interpret that these people are able to rule and they are the best to rule now, and they focus on this concept, and it has become sort of adaptation with the new situation of the universal human being, where a lot of media is divided through a lot of channels, a lot of media. The modern state no more focusing on the formation of security, but there is a lot of media and a lot of channels, and the political Islam groups make use of such issues and manipulates them through politics. And since the modern Arab society, the majority of modern Arab society, who still that understanding of the modernity and modernism is shaky. It's not a deep understanding the concept and the values of modernism. It needs a lot of time to explain, especially such values needs revision, or the post-modernism trend is about to return against these values and correct them. Since our Arab modern societies in its awareness that has weak awareness of the concept of modernism and the modern state, it will be very easy for the political Islam groups, especially, to find their way in such a society and still and remain with its existence, continuous existence. I remember continuously that it has been established since 1925. It's been clinically dated 1954, comes back during Sadat's era, and Sadat was killed on their hands. The Hajjist group, which is part from the Muslim Brotherhood. Then they went into clinical death again during Hosni Mubarak, but they have with two syndicates, and when the Arab Spring emerged, they managed to rule Egypt and Tunisia. We should that the research should be continuous to understand this concept and to understand this new concept, which they wanted to do. I would like. I don't want to take more time. Thank you, Doctor. We are very, at the end of this session. We would like to thank the distinguished speakers for their valuable interventions. We would like to thank Dr. Muhammad Abdullah Al Ali, the CEO and founder of Trends Researches and Advisory Center. And we also would like to thank Aisha Romesi, the Deputy Chief of Scientific Research, Dr. Anas Atoriki, Professor of Modern Civilization, University of Tunisia, as well as Mr. Muntasir Hamada, a researcher in Islamic movements. We would like also to thank you for your valuable interventions and papers and speeches, which was focusing on the academia, Arab academia, and its vision of Islamism under the third annual Political Islam E-Forum under the title of Towards a Global Academia Dialogue on Political Islam. We come to the end of the session, and tomorrow we'll have another session on E-Symposium about the non-Arab academia and its vision of Islamism. Thank you very much indeed.